Hello and welcome. Katie here. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with another project for missing stamps, and today we're going to do the bokeh or bouquet technique for our background. That's what we're going to focus on today, and we're going to use 2 stencils to make that happen for missing stamps. Super fun, super easy. We're going to use the random dots and the large random dot stencil. Now I'm going to first work on our background, coloring the background. So I've got 3 inks: confetti, mulberry, and blue atoll. Those are from Lavinia Stamps or Elements inks, but it's a pink, a blue, and a purple. So anything that you have in your stash, any brand, doesn't matter, will work great for this. And the technique, there's no rhyme or reason. You're just throwing some color down however you like. I like to kind of do little triangles to break up the colors. And then of course, as I put them on, blend over top. So you do want to make sure your colors are going to blend together. So you want to have the color families that aren't going to turn brown on you, right? So now I'm coming in with that mulberry. Now my panel measures 4 by 5 1/4. Just I think it's probably the 100-pound accent opaque cardstock, and you can see there's nothing fancy here. In fact, you want it kind of messy because it's going to add to that bokeh effect with your dots and your white pigment ink. So once I get that done, I do actually take the purple, which is the mulberry, and go over the whole thing and kind of blend everything together. And I do the same with the blue atoll, just to kind of blend all those colors together. But you can still see there's some white shining through there. It's not deep, super dark blended color saturation. Okay, so now we're coming in. I'm going to use the Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment Ink, and I'm using a foam tool for this panel. The next panel, I will use a blending brush so that you can see either one will work. And with the foam tool, I like to kind of stamp and twist. Press down and twist. Not necessarily do a normal blend. I just find it works better that way. So just push it down and twist it around. And if you've got to swirl it a little bit, you can. Now coming in with the large random dots over the top. And I'm being careful because I don't want those smaller circles that are shining through the larger dots to smear. So just be mindful of that. You don't want to push too hard when you're using the larger stencil, the larger random dots, to overlay. And I just love it. I think it's perfect. I'm going to set that off to dry. We're going to work on our next panel. And you know by now I love this color combination. It's the Lime Punch and the Mermaid. And I think I told you Twisted Citron and Mermaid Lagoon, I think it is, would work for distress inks. For the other 2, Picked Raspberry, Salty Ocean, and Seedless Preserve would work. Now, of course, this blending that I'm doing with the blending brushes totally could do with a foam tool. In fact, the one thing I notice about these Elements ink pads is that there's more pigment saturation, okay, and less water content. So usually with blending brushes, when you're ink blending with other inks, you get softer color payoff and you have to build up more. You got to work a little bit harder to get darker color saturation. And I always recommend foam tools if you want a darker color saturation. With these Element ink pads, because there's less water content and more pigment, the blending brushes work the same as a foam tool with the color payoff. So just keep that in mind. If you want it darker like this with your colors, a foam tool is probably going to work better when you're adding your background ink like this. Okay, so here again, white pigment ink using a blending brush. I do the blending motion, the circular motion with the blending brush for these, because with the brushes you get more of a stipply effect if you're pouncing, or even if you try to do that press and press and turn like you would the foam tool. So I just find that using a blending brush this way with the circular motion like normal just works better. Okay, so there's no fancy technique here that when using the blending brush. Now, I will say this. I let these panels with the white pigment ink dry overnight. I recommend it. I don't recommend a heat tool, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a minute. First, though, I want to give you a little tip. So I'm going to use the Gardenia stamp set, as you saw in the main photos there at the beginning, as my focal image. But I want to put a frame around it too. But I got to do my stamping first. And now because this frame comes in quite a bit from the edges, I needed a guide. So I added some liquid glue, just a little bit around the frame. And then I laid it down where I wanted it to go and quickly lifted it up. And that's going to give me little dot guides so I know where to stamp. And then, of course, I put my acetate in, I line up my stamp on that, and then I can pick it up with the Misty Door and do my stamping. Now, the reason that I told you that I let this white pigment ink dry overnight is because when you stamp on white pigment ink and it's wet, white pigment ink takes a long time to dry. And even if you're stamping with, like I'm doing here, VersaFine Claire's pigment ink, that's Nocturne there, it sits on the top, right? But it dries with the white pigment ink. So it fades off. You don't have that sharp black line unless you let the pigment ink dry. So give yourself a little bit of time, let this white pigment ink dry overnight, and then come in and do your black stamping, because then it will sit on the surface of the white like it's supposed to, and it won't fade back. Okay, so now we're going to do our other panel. Same kind of concept, except I'm going to use the frame dies that you see there on the right, just the die, to do my framing before I do the die cut, because I wasn't sure what color frame I wanted to do. So using the die works as well to frame everything up so you know where it needs to go. And then again, stamping with the Nocturne ink, the VersaFine Claire, and then that Happy Birthday to You comes from the Unbirthday stamp set from Missing Stamps. And then for the blue-green panel, I used the Happy Birthday from the Everyday Sentiments stamp set. And then I'll use a blue metallic frame to go around that, and then we'll add it to our white card bases. These are A2 size cards. And then for the blue-green one, I did add the metallic blue cardstock that I used for the frame on the pink and purple. I use that as my backdrop, a layer on that. And then I'm just adding some sheer shimmer dots randomly to add a little bit of something to the background, but that finishes up the cards. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Be sure and check the description box below and check out the products used in today's video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next video.